12 on my local machine here. So I'm going to connect to my default instance. In your case, you would want to enter your server information here. I am using Windows authentication, which is what we just talked about. And let me go ahead and pin this down. So as far as creating a login, let me walk you through the steps in the SQL Server Management Studio, which is SSMS. What you're going to do is you're going to expand the Security tab, and then you're going to expand the Logins tab, okay? And then you are going to right-click. In fact, I think I have a couple of users in here, so let me go ahead and delete this one. Let's see. Okay, so as far as you right-click on the logins and you select New Login. Okay, now this is where you will choose if it's a Windows login or Windows principal or a SQL Server principal. So for now, let me just go ahead with a SQL Server authentication, and I'm going to call it DB. Let me just say DB user. Okay, and you assign it a password. Obviously you would want this to be a combination of lower and uppercase letters with some symbols. I'm going to uncheck these all for now, and then we will talk a little bit about those, but for now let's just go ahead and create it. So I select OK. Now you can see that here is the user in here. Okay, so now as far as login, all that it does is gives access to this login, which is the DB user, to SQL Server. Okay, now at the next point you either have to give them some permissions. We'll come back to server roles. User mapping basically is telling SQL Server, well, this particular login should have access to a particular database. So today we are going to be using Northwind. Okay, so I can just select that, and then these other topics we'll just leave those as is. So I will just hit OK for now. Okay, now at this point all we have done is we have created a login and we have given them permission to Northwind database. Now how would you do this in SQL? Using TSQL. So let me click on this, and I'm going to go to the script over here that I have created earlier, and I will walk you through this. So like I mentioned, as far as creating a login in SSMS, you go to the Security tab, the Logins tab, right mouse button, and then New Login. For creating a login using TSQL, which by the way stands for Transact SQL, you are going to use the basically command create login. Okay, you do create login, the name of the login, you use the password command with their password, and you can assign a default databases and some of these other parameters. I am simply going to highlight this. Okay, and let me pin this down again. So in SQL, if you don't know, you can simply highlight a certain section of the code and then either execute or F5. You'll notice when I go there, you get the F5 button. So now it said it went ahead and created the login. Now if I come back to SSMS on this side and right click and select refresh, there should be a Mary in here. Notice there is no Mary. She was there before, but we deleted it. Now we're recreating it. When I select refresh, she should be right there. Okay, so all we have done is created a login. Now obviously if you wanted to delete this login, you could use drop login Mary, which we're not going to do this right now. But let's say you have some logins. How do you really find what are your server principals? These are basically the server level logins. Okay, well, you can use this this command here, which is using a system object basically. So we go select star from sys, which is the schema, dot server principals, where the type is S or U. Well, what do they mean? S means a SQL login, and U means a Windows login. Okay, so I'm going to highlight this and execute this. Okay, and let me move this up a little bit here so you can see it a little bit better. You'll notice that we have some default logins out of the box, but then we have one called a John, which if I highlight this part you can see that he's a SQL login. We have another one called Buckle, and then we had created this one just a few minutes ago using the using the graphic user interface, and then finally we have Mary in here. Okay, so that is a really good command to find out who is really part of your group in here. Now remember what we have done so far. This is all at the server level. Okay, all this stuff that we have talked about, this is at the server level. Now we really need to move on to the database level. Okay, now instead of calling it a login in SQL Server, you call it a database user. Okay, and again, as far as database, if you're doing this and within the interface, you're going to select the database security tab, which is different than this tab, and then you go to user, right mouse button, and then new user. Okay, so let me go through this. I'm going to expand databases, go to Northwind, go to security. Okay, not storage, security users. Okay, and if I refresh this we already have the DB user that we created in step 1, but I could right click and select. I'm not going to go through this, but basically I could select Mary, since all we have done is created a login, and you're going to map the user Mary to the login Mary, if I can find her right here. Okay, and then you hit OK, and then you hit OK here, and then you hit OK here. So what that does is you're creating a database user named Mary that is mapped or tied to the login Mary. Okay, I'm going to actually cancel out of this and show you this using TSQL. So the command is fairly simple. You basically go use Northwind, which is specifying what database are you using, and then you go create user Mary for login Mary. So a little bit of redundancy, but that's how we do things in SQL Server. And I'm going to highlight this, and this time I'm going to hit F5. Okay, now we just again created the user. If I refresh this, remember we are in Northwind database. I'm going to right click on users and select refresh. Okay, and there she is. Okay, so what we have done so far is we created a user called DB user in Northwind, and then we created a login called Mary, and then we created a user called Mary. And then before we go back to the slides, let us see how do you find the database principals in SQL Server. Well, it's very similar. Instead of doing server principals that we saw here, we are going to use database principals. Okay, and same concept applies. S means a SQL user, U means a Windows user. So let me go ahead and highlight this. You do want to make sure that you are in the right database, which we are. Okay, and then I'm going to hit execute. Alright, so now you should see that and by the way, you can sort this by, let's go ahead and do this. We'll order this by type description. Okay, what that's going to do is, if I run this, it is listing our SQL users first. Okay, so you'll notice Mary's in here, and then we actually have another Windows user, which is the account SQL Server service that is running SQL right now, and that's a Windows user. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save this, and then let us switch back to PowerPoint. and then we can keep going, moving forward. So what we did, is basically created a SQL login, and then we created a SQL user. Okay,